Okay, so we're back, and now we're going to talk about the steps in the scientific method. Okay, first step, you're going to define or identify the problem. That is the first thing that you're going to be doing in your APA assignment, by the way, your little 5-point project is define or identify the problem. It's also what you're going to be doing in weekly exercise 1, where at the end of your search at apa.org, you're going to come up with some ideas, problems that maybe might be studyable in the different topics that you've selected. Once you've come up with an idea, now you're going to form a hypothesis, a prediction of what you think is likely to happen if you were to collect data. So step 1 is just to come up with an idea, figure out what the problem might be that is of interest. And then step 2 is to make a prediction. You'll notice that order. We haven't collected any data yet. We make our prediction based on previous literature, previous experience, things like that, an existing theory, something like that. And then the next step is to actually test the hypothesis. We use the phrase test hypothesis to refer to collecting data and then running statistics to see whether the data supports or refutes the hypothesis. So to test the hypothesis, we're going to organize and analyze the data, and then we're going to assess whether the results supported the hypothesis. If yes, then we're going to draw our conclusions, report our results. We're going to say, wow, I predicted it, the data supported it, yay, happy us. But if the data doesn't support the hypothesis, we're not going to just say, well, I guess my idea was stupid. Instead, we say, maybe there was something wrong with how I conducted the study. Maybe we like to use the phrase tighten up our design. Maybe we need to focus in on the materials that we used, or the instructions that we gave, or the subject sample that we recruited, or there's a whole host of things that can go wrong in a psychology study. So you focus in on what might I have done wrong, and then you try and tighten up the things that you think might be the culprits and run the study again. So you don't immediately just throw out your idea or your prediction. You first thing look at your methodology. That's the easiest thing to try and fix. Like now your new hypothesis becomes, maybe my hypothesis wasn't supported because this thing was wrong, whatever this thing is. So you sort of are testing two hypotheses at once. Is this what was wrong, and now is my original prediction actually supported? Okay, so these are our steps. And I've got them in this nice deliberate order on purpose, because a lot of times students want to go right to collecting data, because who doesn't? That's fun. It is fun. You just think, well, I'll just make a survey, I'll give it to people, and then I'll see what they say. And without any prediction or any goal or any sort of organization. You're supposed to go through these steps because in real science, we're testing a hypothesis. We're not collecting data and then making up an explanation for it afterwards. Okay, now one of the things that should drive our hypothesis development is a theory. Also, our theories are affected by our hypothesis tests. So there's sort of a circle going on here. Hopefully you can recognize what theory is being depicted by this image here, because see Charles Darwin, I don't know if you can see my arrow, but there he is up in the top right. Like he's the pinnacle of evolution. Yeah, this is a picture that's supposed to be depicting at least part of the theory of evolution, right? What is a theory? Okay, now theory is really it's very general, it's comprehensive, it's an effort to explain a lot of things, to bring together disparate evidence and make it make sense. So the job of a theory is to explain the existing evidence. Think about the theory of evolution. It really solidified for Charles Darwin when he was in the Galapagos Islands and he saw these different kinds of finches, which I got a little article for you guys to read on that in one of your weekly exercises. So you have that to look forward to. He saw all these different types of finches, and that helped him to generate a hypothesis to account for why on these little tiny islands where these finches were isolated, would some of them have different kinds of beaks than others of them. The evidence that was existing was the diversity of finches, and then he generated a theory to explain it. Now what's neat about theories is that once you've used the theory to explain what we know so far, we then can use the theory to predict what we also should find out later. So knowing that being isolated on an island helped facilitate the diversity of finch body style and beak style and stuff like that. One prediction was whenever we find isolated pockets of species or groups of people or things like that, we should see similar kind of diversity among these groups. So whenever an isolated island population of any sort is found, scientists get excited because it's a test of the theory. It's a test of the theory that there should be more diversity when you have isolated groups. Now the thing about a theory is that it's not just a guess. It's not just this hunch, and I think this is what it is, what would explain behavior. It's not. It's based on the existing evidence. So it's the best explanation we can come up for that will account for the widest variety of behaviors. I didn't want to just sit here and talk about a biological theory like evolution. I wanted to try and find a decent psychological theory, which we don't have a ton of psychological theories, but I did find Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is the theory that we have certain basic needs that have to be met before we can turn our attention to more complex needs or higher order needs. I liked this particular depiction because it's got Maslow's theory on the left, and then you've got the social needs that are being met by different kinds of social media, right? So you've got the safety needs being met by, what is that, LinkedIn? I think that's the LinkedIn symbol. I probably should have known that before I sanctified this in a video. We got Facebook, we got Twitter, we got Wikipedia, and so that's kind of a funny take on Maslow's hierarchy. Hopefully you guys have all seen Maslow's hierarchy before. But the idea is that it's not just a guess. It's based on what we've seen so far, what we know so far. This is my best attempt to organize that into a coherent story, a coherent account of why this evidence is as it is. That's different from a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a specific prediction that is derived from a theory usually. So from the theory of evolution, we might make a specific prediction that isolated populations will show more diversity than populations where there's intermingling. So here we have Darwin's finches. He actually drew these pictures and stuff. That's pretty impressive. I didn't know that you had to be such an artist to be a naturalist, but his prediction then became that through natural selection, through competition for reproduction, each member of the species will occupy different niches that will allow them to better adapt and survive and get their genes in the future. And then next thing you know, the ones who are most well equipped for occupying that niche will have the best chances of making offspring and will pass on their traits. That prediction comes from his main theory, right? Here I've got Maslow's theory again. And one of the things Maslow had said is that, once you've met your physiological needs, once you've mostly met your security needs, then you're going to move up and up and up towards self-actualization. Other researchers have said, well, now, what if something at the base gets threatened? Like, what if there's a famine in your region? Or there's a war in your region, so your safety is threatened, something like that. Even if you've moved higher up in the pyramid, would you ultimately need to move back down and work your way back up again? So they made the prediction that when one of your lower needs is threatened, it'll cause you to cycle back to that lower need until it's well enough satisfied that then you can turn your attention back to the higher needs. That prediction was based on Maslow's basic theory, and then also evidence that they had observed that, when a person's feeling hungry, a lot of times they aren't that interested in socializing, or when a person is feeling unsafe, they may also feel bad about themselves, things like that. So theories help to drive hypothesis development and help us to make specific predictions in different situations. All right, so now here's the thing. When we test hypotheses, when we are doing hypothesis tests, we have maybe a really good strong theory that keeps getting supported by different hypothesis tests. So I've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and this is this Waba and Bridwell is actually what's called a meta-analysis. They looked at a whole bunch of different studies that had been conducted up until that point, and what they found was that there was a lot of evidence that supported Maslow's theory that all 5 motives in the hierarchy will be achieved in the order predicted. So they have a study from 1966 with Nordic European managers, another one in 1970 using American top and middle managers, and then another one in 1967 using top military managers. So with these 3 studies, it looks like there's a lot of evidence supporting the theory. So does that mean the theory's right? That it's been proven? No, it means that it's viable. We never prove a theory. All this means, with all this support, is that the theory is viable. The opposite can happen if our tests are not supporting the hypothesis. So again, from the same report, they found studies that did not support Maslow's prediction that all 5 motives should be achieved in the same order. One from 1961 on low and middle managers, one from 1962-63 that was on presidents and vice presidents of companies, and then one from 1971 that focused on Mexican workers. So when you've got some things that are supporting the theory and others that are not supporting the theory, it shows you that, you know what, if you look in the right places, you might find evidence that the theory is not accurate, at least not in all cases. And so that's why we never say that a theory's been proven. No matter how many studies support a theory, we never can feel comfortable that the theory's been proven. All we can say so far is that it's viable. When we find evidence of shortcomings in a theory, that's problematic. That's when we start to go, maybe this theory is not the best explanation. I don't know if you noticed from the types of people in the different studies, though, that it looks like if you're sort of in the higher echelon of management, the theory is supported. But if you're looking at the top or towards the bottom of the hierarchy at work, then you see the theory in question. So what happens is you start to alter the theory. You say, well, maybe the 5 steps are achieved in order for these kinds of people who are in these kinds of situations, and for other people who are in other kinds of situations, then we need a different explanation. The key thing to remember is that just because there's lots of evidence supporting a theory does not mean that the theory has been proven. We never prove a theory. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop here, and in our next lecture I'll talk about some specific examples of theories that are viable or in question.